The night was hot, and the marketplace was louder than thunder. Torches burned against the dark sky, and alien traders shouted prices for living beings as if they were selling animals. Chains rattled, cries echoed, and cruel laughter filled the air. At the center of the stage stood a thin alien woman, her skin pale, her body weak. Her large eyes were wet with tears, but she kept her head low. She was holding a small hand, her little child, until the guards tore the child away and locked her in a cage behind her. The mother reached out, screaming, but the guards pushed her down. The crowd only laughed at her pain. "This one is worthless," the auctioneer shouted, his voice sharp and cold. "She is weak, skinny, and desperate, but maybe someone here wants a cheap servant, or maybe someone wants her for fun." The crowd roared with laughter. Some shouted cruel words. Some spat at the ground near her feet. The alien mother closed her eyes, whispering softly, "Forgive me, my child. I sold myself so you would not starve." Her daughter pressed her face against the cage bars, crying, "Mama, Mama." The sound cut through the noise, but no one cared. Instead, the buyers mocked the child too, saying, "2 mouths to feed? Not even worth a single coin." Shame burned the mother's heart, but she did not cry anymore. Her tears were already dry from too many nights of sorrow. Then through the crowd, footsteps echoed differently. Not heavy like alien boots, not slithering like scaled feet, but steady, strong, and human. Heads turned. Whispers began. "A human? What is a human doing here?" The man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes sharp and filled with something the others did not understand. He wore simple clothes, dust covering his boots, but his presence made the guards hesitate for a moment. The alien mother lifted her head just enough to see him. Her heart skipped, for humans were known to be dangerous in this part of the galaxy. Some feared them, others hated them, she thought. Will he be the one to take me? The auctioneer grinned, seeing a chance for profit. "Ah, a human customer. Strong, powerful. Surely you want her, yes?" He slapped the mother's arm, making her stumble forward. "She is cheap. A bargain. You can take the child too if you wish, both for one price." The crowd laughed again, waiting for the human's reply. The mother closed her eyes tight, her body shaking. She imagined chains around her wrists, cruelty in the nights, and her daughter crying in hunger while she could do nothing. She had given herself away for food, but now she wished she had died instead. Then the bidding began. 2 coins, shouted one alien, his tusks dripping with saliva. 3, another laughed. "I'll use her as a cleaner." 4, barked a tall beast. "I'll make her scream." The mother shivered, her lips trembling, but she stayed silent. Every word was a dagger in her soul. The human stood still, watching quietly, his jaw tightened and his fists clenched. Finally, his voice cut through the noise, calm but firm. 10 coins. The entire crowd froze. The auctioneer blinked, almost choking. 10 for her? Are you mad?" Whispers rose like fire in dry grass. Why would a human pay so much for trash? Is he mocking the auction? Does he want her for something cruel? The mother's eyes opened wide, her body weak but her mind racing. She did not understand. Why would a human pay such a price for her, when even her own people would not? The auctioneer, greedy for money, slammed his hammer down. "Sold! To the human!" The crowd cheered and jeered, calling the man a fool. Some spat at his feet, some laughed in his face, but he did not care. The guards shoved the alien mother forward, chains rattling. She nearly fell but caught herself. The human reached out. Not with force, not with cruelty, but with steady hands, strong enough to hold, gentle enough not to hurt. For the first time in years, she felt a touch that was not filled with pain. Her child cried in the cage, "Mama, Mama." The human turned his head, looked at the guards, and said firmly, "She comes too." The guards hesitated, but the human's eyes were unshaken. They opened the cage, and the child ran into her mother's arms. The mother wept silently, holding her daughter close, her body trembling with disbelief. The crowd continued to laugh and mock. But in that moment, something strange filled the air, a question no one could answer. Why would a human pay so much for a worthless alien mother and her child? The mother's heart raced, fear and confusion battling inside her. Was he truly different, or was this only the beginning of another nightmare? She did not know yet, but the chains on her wrists felt lighter than ever before, and as the torches burned low, the whispers followed them into the night. He bought her, but why? The market grew quiet after the hammer fell. The human's bid had shocked everyone, and yet the deal was done. The alien mother stood frozen, still in chains, clutching her daughter close, as if the guards might snatch her away again. The crowd began whispering, their voices sharp with disbelief. Why would a human waste so many coins on her? He must be planning something dark. No man pays such a price without reason. Their words cut the mother's heart, feeding her fear. The human said nothing, his face calm but unreadable. He held the chains with one hand, leading her and the child away from the stage. The guards smirked as they handed her over, laughing among themselves. She won't last long, one muttered. Humans break them fast. Another sneered. The mother's legs felt heavy as stone, but she followed because she had no choice. Her daughter clung to her waist, whispering, "Mama, I'm scared." The mother bent down and kissed the child's head, her voice trembling. "Stay close to me no matter what happens." But inside she thought, if this human is like the others, then tonight may be our last together. They stepped out of the auction hall, the air outside cooler but no less heavy. The torches behind them flickered like dying stars. For the first time, the mother dared to glance up at him. The human's steps were firm, steady, not rushed. He did not drag the chains roughly as others would have. Instead, he walked as though he was guiding her, not pulling her. Still, suspicion burned in her chest. Humans had a reputation. Some were mercenaries, some traitors, many cruel, she wondered. If she had been bought for labor, for pain, or for his amusement, her mind refused to believe there could be another reason. Hope was dangerous. Hope had betrayed her too many times. The child, small and thin, tugged at the human's sleeve. "Sir, are you going to hurt my mama?" she asked in a tiny voice. The mother's breath caught, her heart beating wildly. She pulled the child back, terrified of the punishment such boldness might bring. But the human only looked down at the girl, his expression unreadable. "No," he said simply, his voice calm. "I am not here to hurt." The mother blinked, stunned by the softness of his words. She expected a lie, a cruel trick. Yet something in his tone felt different. Her child tilted her head, confused, then whispered, "Then, why did you buy us?" The human didn't answer right away. He only turned his eyes forward, leading them down the dusty road out of the market. The silence stretched long, heavy, and filled with mystery. They reached a transport craft at the edge of the settlement. It was old but strong, the kind built to travel far. The human unlocked the hatch and gestured for them to enter. The mother hesitated, pulling her child close. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "If you mean to harm us, do it here, not in front of her." The human's eyes flickered with something sharp. Anger, not at her, but at the world that forced such words from her mouth. He shook his head and replied, "No chains inside. You walk free on my ship." Then he unlocked the metal cuffs around her wrists, letting the chains fall with a heavy clang. The mother stared at her bare hands in disbelief. The skin was bruised from years of bonds, yet now it felt almost unreal to be free. Her child gasped with joy and hugged her tighter. "Mama, look, no chains." The mother wanted to cry, but she bit her lip and stayed silent. Her heart whispered, "This cannot be real. No one is this kind. He must want something worse than chains." Inside the ship, the air smelled cleaner. Seats were worn but soft. Lights hummed gently above. The human guided them to sit, then handed them a small pack of food. The child's eyes widened. Real bread, fruit, and a flask of water. She reached out eagerly, but the mother held her back. "Wait," she warned. "It could be poisoned." The human looked at her, then calmly took a piece of bread, broke it, and ate it himself. After swallowing, he placed the rest back into the child's hands. "It is safe," he said. "Eat." The child's hunger overcame her fear, and she devoured the food quickly. Tears ran down the mother's face as she watched her daughter chew happily for the first time in months. She whispered almost to herself, "Why? Why are you doing this?" Her voice was low, filled with suspicion and pain. The human finally sat across from them, leaning forward with steady eyes. "You will know in time," he replied. "For now, rest. You are safe here." The word safe echoed in her ears like a song she had never heard before, but she could not let herself believe it. Not yet. Safe was a lie too many had told. And yet, the warmth in her daughter's smile made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, this human was different. As the engines of the ship roared to life and the market faded into the distance, the alien mother sat in silence, her child asleep in her arms. Her eyes never left the human. Half of her heart burned with fear, but the other half dared to hope. The question remained heavy in her mind. He had bought her. He had bought her child. But not for chains, not for cruelty. So then, why? The ship rose slowly from the ground, leaving behind the dark market of shame. Engines hummed, stars stretched across the sky, and the world that once imprisoned the alien mother grew smaller until it disappeared into the black. She sat on the floor with her child in her lap, her arms wrapped tightly around the girl as though letting go would mean losing her forever. The human sat at the controls, his back straight, his hands moving with quiet skill. He did not speak, and for a while, only the sound of the engines filled the silence. The mother's heart pounded, her mind chasing endless fears. What did he plan for them? Why did he buy them at such a high price only to feed them and release her chains? No one gave freedom without reason, and she feared the reason had yet to come. Her child, however, had already begun to trust. The girl leaned her head against her mother's chest, whispering, "Mama, the food was real. The bread was soft, not moldy like before." Her small smile made the mother's chest ache with both joy and fear. She kissed her daughter's hair and murmured, "Do not trust so quickly. Kindness can be a mask." Hours passed as stars drifted by outside the window. The human finally stood and walked toward them, his boots quiet on the metal floor. The mother stiffened, pulling her child closer, ready to shield her with her own body. He stopped a few steps away and placed something on the floor, a soft blanket and a bottle of water. "You both should rest," he said, his voice calm but not cold. Then he turned and sat back at the controls, saying nothing more. The child reached eagerly for the blanket, wrapping it around herself, but the mother's eyes stayed locked on the human's back. Every breath she took was filled with suspicion. Her hands trembled, torn between gratitude and fear. She whispered, "Why does he not lock us away? Why leave us free inside his ship?" Her daughter yawned, her voice sleepy but innocent. "Maybe because we are safe." The mother shook her head quickly, her throat tightening. "No, do not think that. We are never safe." The stars outside shifted as the ship entered a different route. The hum of the engines grew softer, steady like a heartbeat. The child drifted into sleep, her tiny fingers still clutching the edge of her mother's dress. The mother sat awake, her eyes heavy but her fear stronger than her exhaustion. She thought of all the nights in the slave pens, the empty bowls of stale food, the cruel hands that struck her when she begged for mercy. Could a single human be different from them all? The hours stretched long. Finally, the human rose again, this time carrying 2 metal cups of warm broth. The smell filled the small cabin, rich and comforting. He placed one near the child and another near the mother. "Eat," he said. The child stirred awake, her eyes lighting up at the smell, but the mother slapped the cup away, spilling the broth on the floor. "Do not trick us," she hissed, her voice breaking. Tears welled in her eyes, her body shaking with anger and fear. "If you bought us to torture us, then do it. Do not pretend to be kind." Her voice cracked, filling the cabin with raw pain. The human stared at her for a long moment. His face was calm, but in his eyes burned something deeper. Sorrow, maybe even regret. Without a word, He picked up the spilled cup, walked back to the controls, and sat down again. He did not raise his hand, he did not shout. He simply let the silence return. The mother sat trembling, ashamed and confused. Her daughter touched her cheek softly, whispering, "Mama." He didn't get angry. Her voice was small but filled with wonder. The mother hugged her tightly, whispering back, "That is what frightens me most." The journey stretched into the next day. The human finally spoke again, his voice steady. "We are heading to a safe colony. You will not be sold again. No one will touch you there." The mother's breath caught, her mind spinning. A safe colony? A place without chains? Could such a thing exist? She wanted to believe, but every time she tried, the weight of her past crushed the hope inside her. Her lips parted and she asked the question that haunted her since the auction. Why us? Why buy me and my child? Her voice trembled, filled with both accusation and desperate need for an answer. The human did not turn to face her, but his voice was low, because no one else would. Because I could not stand by and watch. The mother stared at him, her chest tightening. Her heart wanted to trust, but her scars screamed it was a trap. Her daughter smiled softly, curling under the blanket. "He is different, Mama," the little one whispered before falling back to sleep. The mother sat awake long into the journey, her eyes never leaving the human, her mind never leaving the question. He had not harmed them. He had not chained them. He had even given them food and warmth. But she could not silence the voice inside her heart that said, "No one gives without taking something in return." The stars outside glimmered endless and silent, and so their journey continued, filled with quiet tension, the child dreaming peacefully, the mother drowning in doubt, and the human steering them toward a future that neither of them could yet see. The engines hummed softly as the ship floated through endless stars. Inside the cabin, silence pressed heavy, broken only by the child's gentle breathing as she slept wrapped in the blanket. The alien mother sat awake, her tired eyes fixed on the human who guided the ship. Her heart still battled between fear and hope. Every kind act he gave only deepened her confusion. She remembered the jeers of the crowd at the auction, the way they laughed when he paid so much for her. Their voices still echoed in her mind. He is a fool. He will break her soon. But he had not broken her. Instead, he had freed her wrists, fed her child, and kept his distance. Why? What game was he playing? Her body trembled as she pulled the child closer. The little girl stirred, rubbing her eyes, and whispered, "Mama, he didn't hurt us. Maybe he never will." The mother hushed her quickly, pressing a hand to her daughter's lips. "Do not speak such foolish hope. Kindness always has a cost." Yet her own voice cracked, betraying the weakness of her belief. Hours later, the human finally stood, leaving the controls. His footsteps echoed lightly as he walked toward them. The mother stiffened, clutching her child like a shield. Her breath quickened, her body ready for whatever demand might come. But instead of threats, the human crouched down at their level, his eyes steady and clear. "I gave you food," he said, his voice calm. "I freed your chains, and still you look at me as though I am your enemy." The mother swallowed hard, her throat dry, her lips parted, and her voice shook as she whispered, "Because I do not know what you want." Her child looked between them, fear and hope warring. In her small face, the human took a deep breath, his shoulders heavy with unspoken weight. "I want nothing from you. I want you safe." The words hung in the air, strange and almost impossible to believe. The mother laughed bitterly, a hollow sound. "Safe? Do you know what that word means to me? Nothing. Safety does not exist for those like us. Chains are the only truth we know." Her voice cracked, anger and pain spilling out like floodwaters. She lifted her scarred wrists, shoving them toward him. "Do you see this? These marks? They never fade. Even without chains, I am not free. No human can change that." Her eyes burned with tears, but her hands shook with fury. The human did not flinch, did not argue. He simply reached out slowly, gently taking her wrists in his hands. His touch was warm, steady, not forcing, not cruel. He looked directly into her eyes and said firmly, "Then I will prove it. No one will chain you again. Not while I live." The mother froze, stunned by the weight in his words. She searched his eyes for lies, for tricks, for any sign of cruelty hidden beneath. But all she found was fire. Raw, unyielding, human fire. Her lips trembled. Her voice, barely a whisper. "Why? Why would you care for a stranger? For me? For my child?" The human's jaw tightened, and for the first time his voice cracked with emotion. "Because I know what it is to lose family. I know what it means to be powerless while those you love suffer." His eyes darkened, shadows of old wounds crossing his face. "I could not save mine, but I can save you." Her child, wide-eyed, slipped free from her mother's arms and crawled closer to him. She placed her small hand over his where it still held her mother's wrist. "Promise," she whispered, her innocent voice cutting through the heavy silence. The human looked at the girl, his expression softening. "I promise," he said, his words steady as stone. "No harm will touch you while I breathe." The mother's heart twisted painfully. For years, promises had been lies, chains had been truth. And yet, hearing those words, seeing her daughter smile for the first time in so long, she felt something she had buried long ago. Hope. Fragile and dangerous, her tears finally spilled, falling onto her child's hair. "You should not believe in promises," she whispered to her daughter, but her voice lacked the strength it once carried. The human stood slowly, releasing her wrists. "You don't have to believe my words," he said as he returned to the controls. "Only my actions will prove the truth." The engines roared louder as the ship changed course. The stars outside blurred as they jumped into a faster route. The mother sat in silence, clutching her child, her heart torn between fear and the fragile seed of trust that had been planted. Her mind screamed that no human could be trusted, but her heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, this one was different. Her daughter leaned against her, whispering with a sleepy smile, "Mama, he kept his promise already. No one hurt us tonight." The mother held her close, staring at the human's back as he piloted the ship. The silence of the journey no longer felt as heavy as before, and though her lips did not speak it, deep inside, she prayed that the human's promise would not break like all the others. The ship drifted through the endless sea of stars. Inside, the cabin was quiet, but the silence carried weight. The alien mother sat with her child asleep in her lap, eyes fixed on the human's back as he guided the vessel. His promise still echoed in her ears, sharp and haunting. "No harm will touch you while I breathe." She wanted to forget it, to dismiss it as another lie, yet her heart refused. She leaned her head against the wall, whispering to herself, "Why would he? Kare? What makes him different?" But no answer came, only the steady hum of the ship. Hours later, when the stars shifted and the ship slowed from its jump, the human finally spoke. His voice was low, almost heavy, as if pulling each word from deep inside. "You asked me why," he said, not turning his head. The mother stiffened, clutching her child protectively. His tone was not cruel. It was tired. Like a man carrying wounds no one else could see, he rose from the pilot's seat and walked toward them. For the first time, the mother saw his face clearly in the dim light, the lines around his eyes, the scars across his jaw, the weight he carried in every step. He crouched near them, lowering his voice so the child would not wake. "I had a family once," he began, his eyes distant. "A wife, a daughter. Their laughter used to fill my home." The mother's breath caught, surprised by the softness in his voice. But then his tone hardened, his fists clenching at his sides. "They were taken. Raiders came in the night, the same kind of market thieves, who sell people like you." His jaw tightened, his teeth grinding. "They burned my home, my wife, my daughter." His voice broke for the first time. "They did not survive." The mother's eyes widened, shock piercing through her fear. For a long moment, she could not speak. This human had suffered the same pain she carried, the loss of family, the cruelty of chains and fire. Her throat tightened, her heart beating fast. He continued, his gaze lowering. I swore I would never turn my eyes away again. Not when I saw someone suffering. Not when I had the power to stop it. The mother swallowed hard, words trembling on her lips. You bought me because I reminded you of them. The human shook his head slowly. No, you are not them. No one could ever replace them. But when I saw you, hungry, broken, clutching your child while the crowd mocked you, how could I stand by? I could not save my family, but I could save you. Her chest ached with a strange feeling she could not name. Half of her heart wanted to scream that he was lying, that no one could be so selfless, but the other half understood him too well. She remembered nights of crying silently so her daughter would not hear. She remembered praying for someone, anyone, to help, and no one ever came, until him. Her lips trembled as she whispered, You lost everything. And still you give? Why? The human's eyes flickered with grief but also with fire. Because if I stop giving, if I let the galaxy break me, then their deaths mean nothing. I refuse to be like the monsters who destroyed them. Tears blurred her vision before she realized they were falling. Her daughter stirred in her sleep, mumbling softly. Mama. The mother kissed her child's forehead, her tears dropping onto her small cheek. For the first time she felt as though someone understood her pain. Not with pity, not with mockery, but with truth. Still, fear clung to her heart like chains. You speak like a man of honor, she whispered, her voice trembling. But I have seen honor twist into cruelty before. I have seen smiles turn into chains. What if you are the same? What if tomorrow your promise breaks? The human looked at her, his eyes steady. Then judge me not by my words, but by what I do. Let time be my proof. He stood, returning to the pilot's seat, his voice quiet but firm. I cannot change your past, but I can fight for your future. The mother sat frozen, her tears drying on her cheeks. Her child shifted in her arms, smiling faintly in her dreams. The mother's heart twisted painfully. She wanted to trust, but the scars of her life screamed at her not to. And yet in that moment she could not deny one truth. This human had not hurt her, not once, not even when she defied him. Her eyes softened as she whispered to herself, He is broken, like me. But before peace could settle, the ship's alarm blared suddenly. Red lights flashed across the cabin, the sound sharp and warning. The human's head snapped up, his hands flying across the controls. The mother's chest filled with dread as the screen lit with approaching signals, multiple ships closing in fast. The child woke with a start, frightened by the alarm. Mama, what's happening? The mother held her tightly, her eyes locked on the human. He muttered under his breath, his tone sharp and grim. They found us. The alarm screamed through the ship, red lights flashing against the steel walls. The alien mother froze, her arms tightening around her daughter while her heart pounded like a drum of war. The child whimpered, burying her face in her mother's chest. Mama, what's happening? The mother had no answer, only fear, cold and sharp. At the controls, the human's jaw clenched as he read the signals flashing on the screen. 3 ships, fast and heavy, closing in from behind. Raiders, he thought, the same kind that sold women and children like cattle, he muttered under his breath. I knew they wouldn't let us go so easily. The mother's eyes widened, recognition piercing her like a knife. They are the ones who owned me, she whispered, her voice shaking. They will come for us. They will take us back. Her arms squeezed tighter around her daughter as if her grip alone could stop the inevitable. No one escapes them, she whispered, her lips trembling. The human spun the controls, the ship jerking into a sharp turn. Stars streaked across the window as the engines roared louder. But the raiders followed, their ships firing bursts of light that rattled the shields. The cabin shook violently, making the child cry out in fear. The mother held her close, rocking her gently even as her own fear nearly crushed her. Her eyes darted to the human, who stood firm at the controls, his face set like stone. "You cannot fight them," she said, desperately. "There are too many. They will kill you, and they will take us." Her voice broke, her tears streaming. "Please, leave us. Save yourself." The human turned his head just enough for her to see his eyes burning with fire. "I told you," he said firmly, his voice like steel. "No one touches you while I live." He pressed a switch, and hidden panels on the ship opened, revealing old but powerful weapons. Cannons hummed as energy charged through them, ready for battle. The mother stared in shock, clutching her daughter tighter. This was not a man running from danger. This was a man prepared to face it, the raiders. Voices crackled over the comms, filled with cruel laughter. "Human, you have something that belongs to us. Hand over the woman and the brat, and maybe we let you crawl away." Their laughter cut like knives, filling the cabin with dread. The mother buried her face in her daughter's hair, whispering prayers to gods she no longer believed in. She expected him to break, to surrender, to hand them over, because that was the way of the galaxy. But instead, his voice thundered across the comm, cold and fearless. "They belong to no one. Not anymore." The raiders snarled in rage, their ships firing a fresh volley of blasts. The humans' hands moved quickly, dodging the attacks while returning fire. Explosions lit the darkness outside, sparks flying across the void. The child peeked from her mother's arms, her small eyes wide with both fear and awe. "Mama, he's fighting for us," she whispered, her voice shaking but filled with wonder. The mother wanted to silence her, to tell her not to hope. But her own heart stuttered at the truth in those words. Yes, he was fighting for them, not for coin, not for power. For them, the battle raged on, the ship shuddering under the strain. The human gritted his teeth, sweat sliding down his brow as he maneuvered through enemy fire. One raider ship exploded under his counterattack, flames scattering like dying stars, but two more pressed closer, their weapons pounding against the shields. The warning lights flashed red again, shields weakening, power dropping. The mother cried out, "You will die for us. Stop this madness." Her voice cracked, desperate. But he only shouted back, his voice cutting through the alarms. "Better I die fighting than live watching them take you." The words struck her like a blade of fire. No one had ever spoken for her like that. Not her own kind, not anyone. For the first time, she felt her fear twist into something new. Not just terror of loss, but terror of losing him, the child. Clutched her mother's hand, whispering, "He won't let them win." Her innocent faith brought tears to the mother's eyes. She wanted to believe, but the universe had never given her reason to. And yet, as she looked at the human, standing unbroken against the storm, a fragile spark lit inside her chest. The raiders circled, preparing for a final strike. Their voices sneered over the comm. "Last chance, human. Hand them over, or you all die." The mother held her breath, certain he would have no choice. But the human's hand slammed against the controls, his voice a roar of defiance. "Then we die free." The ship surged forward, engines burning brighter, weapons blazing with renewed fury. The battle shook the stars, the outcome uncertain. The mother clutched her daughter, her heart torn between fear and belief. If they survived, she knew her life would never be the same, because this human was not like any other she had known. He was willing to risk everything for a promise. As the raiders closed in, the cabin shook again, lights flickering. The mother whispered, her voice trembling, but strong, "Please, let him win." And in the roar of battle, the future of her life and her child's hung by a single thread. The ship shook violently as another blast struck the shields. Sparks flew across the cabin, alarms screamed, and smoke filled the air. The alien mother clutched her child tightly, her heart thundering. She whispered desperately, "Please hold on, little one, please." At the controls, the human stood firm, his hands flying across switches and levers. The raiders pressed closer, circling like hungry beasts around wounded prey. One ship loomed directly ahead, weapons glowing, ready for the final strike. The raider's cruel voice crackled through the comms. "You cannot win, human. Surrender the woman and her brat, and we will let you crawl away with your life." The mother's stomach twisted, her fear screaming that he should give them up. Her lips trembled as she whispered, He cannot fight them all. He will die. But then she looked at him, his back straight, his eyes burning with fire. There was no surrender in him, not even in the face of certain death. He muttered through clenched teeth, "I made a promise." With a roar, he pulled the ship into a sudden dive, dodging the enemy blast. The cabin shook, the child cried out, but the human's focus never wavered. He fired the cannons, striking one raider ship across its side. It spun into the void, erupting into flames that lit the darkness. The mother gasped, her arms tightening around her child, one enemy down, but two still remained. The raiders grew furious, their voices snarling over the comm. "You will regret this. No one defies us and lives." They fired together, twin blasts hammering the shields. The ship screamed in protest, warning lights flashing red across the cabin. The human gritted his teeth, sweat streaking his brow. For a moment, it seemed the ship would break apart. But then, through the storm of fire, his eyes sharpened with resolve, he whispered to himself, "Not today." He slammed a final switch, releasing hidden charges from the ship's hull. Explosives ignited in a blinding flash, tearing through space. Both raider ships were caught in the blast, their hulls cracking, flames swallowing them whole. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the fading echo of the explosion. The alarms dimmed, the smoke cleared, and the ship floated steady. Once more the mother's chest heaved as she stared at him in shock. He had fought, and he had won. Her child peeked from her embrace, eyes wide with awe. "Mama, he saved us," the little girl whispered, her voice trembling. The mother could not answer, her throat too tight with tears. The human finally turned from the controls, his face pale but unbroken. He stepped toward them slowly, his body heavy with exhaustion. When he stopped in front of them, his voice was steady, though softer than before. "It's over. You are safe now." The word struck her harder than any chain ever had. Safe. She had heard the word before but never believed it. Now, for the first time, it felt real. Her tears spilled freely, running down her cheeks. She knelt to the floor, holding her child close, whispering, "He kept his promise, and he truly kept it." The child slipped from her arms and ran to the human, her tiny hands grabbing his. "Thank you," she said, her small voice filled with innocence and truth. The human knelt, resting his rough hand gently on her head. "You don't need to thank me. You deserve to live free." The mother rose slowly, her steps shaky, her heart heavy with emotions she had buried for years. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "I sold myself to feed my child. I thought I had given up everything. But you gave us back more than food, more than freedom." Her eyes glistened with tears as she whispered, "You gave us hope." The human's gaze softened, sorrow and strength blending in his eyes. "You are not property. You are not a burden. You are family now." The words stole her breath. Her body trembled, her lips quivered, and she whispered back, "No one has ever said that to me before." He stepped closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was warm, steady, unlike the cruel hands of the past. "I don't want chains around you," he said softly. "I want you to stand beside me, free. If you choose to." Her heart broke and healed at the same time. She thought of all the years of suffering, of the nights her daughter cried in hunger, of the shame that drowned her spirit. And now, this man, this human, stood before her, offering, not ownership but choice. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I choose you." Her child clapped her small hands, smiling brightly through her tears. "Mama, we have a family now." The mother held her daughter close, her voice trembling with joy and disbelief. "Yes, little one, we do." The human watched them, his chest heavy with both grief and relief. He had lost his own family, but in saving them, he had found something new, not a replacement, but a reason to live again. As the ship drifted quietly through the stars, the darkness of the galaxy seemed a little less heavy. The mother sat beside the human, her daughter nestled between them. No chains bound her wrists, no fear clouded her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt not like property, not like a victim, but like a woman who had been chosen, not for labor, not for pain, but for love. And as the stars glimmered outside, she knew the truth. She had sold herself for survival, but what the human gave her was something priceless. Not chains, not shame, but freedom, hope, and a place where she finally belonged.